Welcome to Sex and Breakfast, the sexy way to start your day. Dishing out sexpert advice and spicy insights about sex, love, and everything in between. Hosted by sex coaches and therapists from around the globe.
Today on Sex and Breakfast, we've got some porn sizzling on the grill, although it's kind of more like coffee or eggs because you can have it so many different ways. So, porn, you either love it or you hate it, or it's not your cup of tea. So, me, I love porn. So, how about you, listeners? If you could just comment. And, ladies, what do you think? How do you feel about porn?
I like to say that I am a porn positive sex coach. So I'm definitely supportive of it with a few caveats, which we'll talk about later.
So I come from a pretty conservative Christian background. So I've had to kind of relearn the way I think about porn because it was very, very negative growing up. And so I work with people from all spectrums. So I'm probably a little bit more in like the gray neutral standpoint, where I'm I balance on both sides for people. Yeah.
Yeah, same like Nicole as well. I grew up in a conservative Muslim family, and yeah, it's quite conservative. um, and it, I guess it depends what you think about the conservatives. Conservative, but that's another topic altogether. But it is more a conservative, traditional family with my Indonesian background, Indonesian Asian background. And so, like Nicole, I grew up with negative aspect of porn, and so I'm also stand in the gray neutral zone. And especially nowadays, one of the biggest concern is for me it's the trend of how porn become very violent and how lots of young audience learn porn from learn about sexuality from those kind of really violent porn. So yeah, I shifted my position recently actually because I'm a bit concerned about all this kind of new phenomenon that's happening. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Jan. Yeah, definitely. Porn has changed a lot over the years, right? So, the original kind of porn is obviously visual, and I'm going to talk about that last. But the second type of porn that is still the most popular, believe it or not, is actually the written kind, literature, also known as erotica. There's audio porn, which is like a narrative for those who are more comfortable with the auditory type of porn or just auditory, sexy auditory talk. And we'll talk more about that. And then the last and not least and most common type of porn is the visual porn. So, what formats do you think are the most popular and why? So, these are just questions we're going to ponder. Um,
I'm just going to have to say whatever you can see on your phone because we're obsessed with our phones.
Yeah, I would have to say erotica. Um, and as you said, it's one of the earliest forms and it's remains one of the most popular. And I think it's really a positive in a lot of ways, especially if that is your first exposure. And I can say that that's was my introduction. While my parents were still censoring spicy scenes in movies, my mother was very supportive of me reading adult romance novels, even though she censored the visual. And I am forever grateful for that type of allowance because I was able to read and learn about romance and spicy stuff at a more age appropriate level without being completely censored and being shocked later in high school. So in book talk, hashtag book talk, romantasy, spicy books, I mean, that's trending so hard this last year on Instagram and TikTok. So I'm very into that genre.
Me as well. We should do actually a whole episode on that, on romantasy books that are popular. So yeah,
Noted.
definitely.
Definitely.
Question:
Oh yeah,
It's
please.
is it more like gender based kind of thing? So women are into more erotica and reading books and romantic novels, and then the male counterpart is more of movies and stuff.
I don't
Is that
I don't well, I just in my experience with clients and with men in general that I've known and know, I think the visual type of porn is most popular. Although I know some that like to read it as well, like to read erotica and likes to read like to read books that we like to read, right? The erotica books. But I'm pretty sure that the most common type is like Nicole said, the phone, the kind that's on your phone, because that's just the most popular because it's the most easily and it's most easily consumed one as well.
An interesting trend that I'm seeing as it relates to gender is it's been a really it can be a really connecting experience when a partner shares what they've been reading. So again, on Instagram and TikTok, I've been seeing a lot of these reaction videos where either the female identified partner will be reading aloud a spicy section, and their male identified partner is like, "Are you kidding me? You like this?" So there's this like shock factor and this like, "I didn't know that you enjoyed this kind of stuff," and that has been a really positive discussion between couples. And then I'm also seeing male identified uh, content creators like fully reading a book on their own, a spicy book. There's like, for example, a genre called I think like monster erotica. So that's
Mm-hmm.
very much like the fantasy beast, some sort of animal shape shifting, and men are reading those and taking some pointers. Uh, so,
Are
you,
tentacles involved in that kind of porn as
of
well?
of course, New Orleans gotta read her tentacle porn. Um, so yeah, I think there is, Dion, a split in genders, but I can see a lot of cross experiencing.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the different kinds of porn. So also there's the other kind of porn that's becoming more and more popular is actually ethical porn. So ethical porn is porn that's shot in a manner with consent and where everybody is um, getting paid or they agree to not get paid essentially. So not Pornhub, not YouPorn, and not like porn. There's also X Hamster. Those are mainstream porn sites. Although I found ethical porn on those sites as well, because you can find anything essentially on those sites. But what does ethical porn look like to you, ladies?
I like that idea of everyone have their consent respected, get paid equally, non-exploitative, and their well-being and health are being well considered.
I think something that I've found that's become an issue with some of my clients around porn being a concern is when they think that this is what real sex looks like. And so I like the idea of ethical porn possibly having a little bit more of reality to it, where it's not changing the angles or changing. Faking the orgasm in a way that allows people to think, oh, this is real. This is what real sex looks like. Because a lot of times with my clients, I'm like deporning them from what they see so they can have better experiences with their partners.
So a lot you bring up a very good point, Nicole, because a lot of porn it's being shot at an angle that satisfy what they call it media in the media term male gaze. So they are shot with the view of male pleasure, and so it's shot for a certain angle that satisfy the male gaze. And a lot of ethical porn actually shot by women, and the way women view things and the way we present things will be very, very different as compared to where it's catered to male gaze. So there's also that throwing in the mix.
Yeah, just to piggyback and name one of my favorite go-to sites is Erica Lust. Erica Lust is a female porn director herself, and then after years of doing that, she ended up creating this platform where I believe most, if not all, of the films she features are of female directors, which that means they're going to be filming from that female gaze for that female gaze, Dion, as you suggest. So um, when I talk about porn as a porn positive sex coach, I'm making sure my clients know about this genre, ethical porn, what it entails, um, educating my clients, for example, that intimacy coordinators are an important part of filming and making sure all of the talent and actors in a film are in consideration and feel safe. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Ethical porn is creating a huge buzz, and I think it also makes it easier for even therapists and sex coaches, definitely, to be able to recommend porn as long as it's ethical porn, right? So it makes it, porn is still considered taboo. However, I think the ethical porn piece makes it so that it's okay, quote unquote, okay, to recommend porn as a tool for whatever it is your client needs. So, I wanted to talk about how porn can be used as a tool, whether it's for a tool for self pleasure, relationship enhancement, and education. And I actually wanted to talk about, because we're all sex coaches and we work with clients, do you recommend it to your clients? And why? And what situations have you recommended it to clients? So I would love to share. Most of the time, I recommended it in particular to female clients that I've had where they have never seen a woman orgasm before. So I used to give out a list of sites, um, and this was years ago, so like 5 or so years ago in particular, where it was like huge. So I'd recommend these sites where people can go and see actual orgasms, women orgasming, because they're like, oh, my body does that. It's like, yeah, because there's definitely telltale cues when women are orgasming. And there's a whole process that women go through when they're orgasming, men too, but women in particular, that happens. And you can tell whether it's a real orgasm or it's not. And most of the mainstream porn is not real. So that's why it's so nice for the women to see that just because they're watching it also doesn't mean they're lesbian. It's just the curiosity piece, and that was important to them. So that's how I used it in the past.
I love that, and this reminds me of one of my first, uh, one of the first websites that I visited was beautifulagony.com, and that's porn that just films people orgasming from the neck up. So it's very focused on just, yeah, that moment of pleasure, and I hear a lot of clients feel ashamed of the faces and the natural contortions during orgasm. So I love recommending Beautiful Agony. And I think another way that I like to introduce my clients to porn, similar to what you just shared, Dominique, specifically when we're talking about squirting, right? So a lot of references of like, I want to make my partner squirt, and they're imagining squirting as this fire hose, this very, very extreme scenario. And I'm not saying that that's not possible naturally for some women, but it's definitely not for all women. So I try and find real representations of how squirting can look different ways.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's important because I've gotten a lot of clients too who are like, I want to make my partner squirt. It's like, well, It's not going to look necessarily like what you find in mainstream porn. So, yeah, because all women can squirt. We all have the capability to squirt, but it just happens differently than on porn most of the time. Dion, do you recommend porn to your clients?
For those who are open to it, yeah, that's, sometimes I encourage them to write their own mini stories, and
I
then
love that.
Oh, I love
yeah,
that.
and then especially if they are feeling, if they're not comfortable with porn, so I suggest them to write the mini stories and then share it with their partners,
Love that.
even if it's just a tiny paragraph.
For me and with my personal clients, I've found that I've recommended a lot of audio erotica. I've had clients that are feeling uncomfortable about what to say in the bedroom or not knowing how to verbalize themselves sexually. And it's a really great tool for them to listen to something and say, oh, like, I like that word, or I like how they moan, or this or that. And they can use it in their solo practice, or they can use it with a partner, and it just kind of like opens this door to new ways of exploring their sexuality verbally, and it can be really fun and allow people to have a lot more confidence if that's something that they want to work on, is like their verbal tools in the bedroom.
Oh, I really love that. Yeah, I've recommended. There's a site called Dipsy that we as all sex coaches and sexologists had it recommended to us. We use it in our practice, and it's amazing. And there's also another site. I think Norlin, you said it.
Try Quinn.
Triquin. Okay.
Yeah. And that's a really cool one too, because they often have some featured actors and actresses that are really well known that are dipping into this. So if you have a crush on some actors, which I do, what's the one? The guy, the hot priest from the Fleabag, he just recently did one on there, which I love. But then they also have just all sorts. So yeah, they're both phone apps, both really cheap, and yeah, you can listen while you're doing the dishes.
I've heard I've also seen things on TikTok and Instagram. I think you mentioned it earlier, Norlin, where the husband gets home and connects to the woman's Bluetooth, and she's hearing an erotic. She's listening to these things, and he's like, "What in holy God
Yeah.
are you listening to?" She's like, "Nothing, nothing at all." She's like vacuuming and listening to this and
Yeah.
doing the dishes. So yeah, it's a fun. I mean, audio erotica is amazing, and I've had a lot of clients like you, Nicole, ask me like, well, even partners in the past asked me like, well, I don't know how to talk dirty. I really would like to talk dirty. Please help me. It's like, we got you, because these, and also, I mean, we could always teach them, but I think the learning through the speaking piece is really important. Definitely. Yeah, you could be going for a walk and listening to audio erotica. I've done that actually. You're like listening to these foul, fabulous things. It's really amazing. Okay, so the next thing I have to say about, because I am porn positive, I think we all are in some way. Um, we need to remember that porn is entertainment, and B, porn is best used in moderation, just like anything, right? So even the best foods can lead to a food coma. So binging on porn for an entire day is not healthy at all. But I wanted to talk about how can couples use porn to enhance their relationship, because I think it's controversial to recommend porn. I've actually had to have clients stop using porn, but I've also recommended porn to clients that want to try something different in the bedroom. So, how have you used porn for couples that you've been coaching in the past?
Yeah, I always caution against sharing what you normally watch, because a lot of, quite often, one half of a partnership is just like very curious from an insecure place of like, I want to see what my partner's watching. They may say that they're supportive of their partner watching porn, but they're like, but I want to know what it is. And I remind clients that having some mystery within a relationship is totally healthy, and we are entitled to some level of privacy of what we watch. So when I frame for couples how to go about watching porn together, I suggest they start by watching things that they discover together. So they both go on a website, they both browse the categories from a curious standpoint, rather than let me show you my browser history. This is my go to, because that often presents some sensitivities. You can feel triggered and feel like you compare yourself with what your partner is enjoying in their private time. So I support it, but with that caveat of exploring together with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to just speak directly to those who come from a conservative Christian background and just say, like, I see you. I get how complicated and uncomfortable this topic can feel. And your values and boundaries are absolutely valid. So here's my invitation. Just stay with this episode, stay with our conversation. We're not here to change your beliefs, but to open up a thoughtful conversation, really to just ask yourself, like, what am I consuming? And is it strengthening the love and intimacy I want? Or is it creating distance between me and my partner? And that's really what I invite when I'm talking to all of my clients. It's not about shame, it's about honesty and alignment, and what is supporting your relationship in a way that you deserve. So, if this episode is sparking something for you, I invite you to share it with someone you trust and say, like, hey, this is making me think. What do you think about this? Because that's how real change and connection can start, is just by having a loving conversation about porn with somebody.
Oh, I love that. I love that a lot. Thank you so much, Nicole, for saying that. Because it is very important. Yeah. I want to talk about boundaries in porn. And Norlin, you started the conversation, and you also, Nicole, just having boundaries around your partners and around yourself, like allowing yourself privacy, but also allowing yourself, kind of like if you're watching porn, set a timer, because you can kind of get lost in the porn universe, right? It's just like anything. If you're into it, you can go into the spiral down, and then next thing you know, you've lost a lot of time. And that leads me to the piece about porn as entertainment again, but also it can be educational. So we've mentioned things like Dipsy and obviously there's books that you can read. I personally, one of my very first exposures to porn was the Kama Sutra. I found it in a bookstore. It like jumped off the shelf at me, more or less. I was like, what's this? I was 16 and I read it and it was beautiful, right? And so that could be considered an educational tool because it's so old. The content itself. It's basically a book of sexual positions, and this is before I even ever had sex. But most porn can be considered just entertainment purposes only, although you can also use it for education. There's another one called OMG Yes, which is basically, it shows the female genitalia. It's an interactive experience, and it teaches you how to pleasure women, and there's a whole series, and it's a fantastic thing that I recommend to my clients as well, and I know most of you do as well, who are sexologists and sex coaches, although that could also be considered porn, but it also is educational because it can be educational. Oh, I wanted to also, and Tian, this is where your comment comes in. So what are healthy boundaries when it comes to porn consumption? Tian, I'd love to hear your experience because of your conservative background.
Again, I think I like what Nicole say. It's whether it's aligned to your value or not, because there are some cases where you're not even encouraged or permissible to watch porn. And so what is your values? I always get my client go back to their own values, examining their own values, talking about what are they comfortable about and what are they not comfortable about. And so yeah, this is quite challenging, especially if you come from a more conservative family where you really not you really don't have the permission to see porn. But I'm surprised when you say educational instruction manuals and stuff are considered
Mhm.
porn.
I think that's debatable personally, but I think it
Mm,
goes in the porn category, right? Especially now, in particular, what we in the US are dealing with is they're kind of stripping away education. Like
mm,
when I was in school, and I think probably each of you who grew up in the US as well, we watched a baby being birthed out of a woman's vulva and vagina. But I don't think they do that anymore, quite frankly. I haven't heard of
mm,
anyone ever seeing that anymore. They just so drawn pictures of the genitalia. And actually, sometimes it's wrong. I saw one in a college classroom that was wrong. It didn't have a
mm.
clitoris. I was like, are you
Lovely.
freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So ultimately, when it comes to education, education is still important. And so how do you learn about anatomy if you don't even have the correct information? What's the purpose, how it is used, and the value that peoples are embodied, and also challenging the notion of shame. This is the most difficult aspect as well. Yeah, and shame can be created by different kind of narratives, but also that secrecy around curiosity. Sometimes people go to porn because they are curious. They want to know what sex is about, and then they learn it from porn instead of learning it from a right education materials. And then they stumble upon it, they feel shameful, and then spiral down that way instead of, okay, teach me what's the best way to pleasure a woman, to pleasure my husband. Yeah. So we get into that kind of sex ed conversation. Yeah.
Which we will make a whole nother episode at one point. Unless we
We
already
have to
have. Unless we
revisit
already have.
tonight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on the shame piece because even porn I've seen from Japan in particular, they blur out the genitalia, and that's also goes for the anime. They'll blur out the genitalia in anime as well. So you're having people go to it to watch, and they can't even see everything, right? So you're like, okay, so maybe I should feel shameful for a watching this, a doing this, and just being a human being in a body. I should feel shame for that because if it's being blurred out, then something's not right, right? That could be a
Mhm.
message that people get. Hmm. Yeah. All right. Whew, this is a great conversation today, ladies. So I wanted to recap again the importance of the entertainment value of porn because porn is made for entertainment. Not it can be educational, but it's generally not. And I wanted to emphasize that porn is not real life. It's wrapped in a message when used correctly. Porn can be a positive part of adult life, but it should not be used to educate yourself solely from. Hopefully not. Hopefully there's, but I know it happens, right? So, what are key takeaways that listeners should remember from today's discussion? Nicole.
I would say that it's really important to have conversations about this. Um, it can feel, it's so crazy that we live in a society where everything is talked about and everything feels open, and yet there's so much shame still around sex and porn and these topics. Um, but the way to unravel that and get to a place that feels really good about what you're doing is being able to have an open and honest conversation. And if it's something that you don't know how to do yet, like that's why there's sex coaches and sex therapists. And we talk about it all day. So there's no shame in this container.
I love what Nicole say. Aside from shame and exploring values, differing values, but that question is that bring us together or bring us apart? That's quite powerful. A reminder.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna continue circling back around to values and starting there with clients, because I'm personally happy to work with clients whose decision is to not view porn at all. But I'm also happy to work with clients who are curious about porn and want to um, kind of build a relationship with porn that is embodied and ethical. And I'm also open to working with people who have watched all the porn and who now need to dial it back for various reasons. So, and what I'm taking away is what both Dion and Nicole said, that it's that conversation starts with values, and really getting clear about that, and seeing where there's an alignment between both partners and where there might not be, and how to address that going forward.
Oh, this is so beautiful. I agree with everything Lady said. And I think just moving forward, just keeping an open mind, but standing strong when you need to be strong, right? And knowing your values. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for today.
Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, send us some love by sharing, hitting subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps us connect to more incredible people like you. If you want to learn more about sex coaching or therapy, you can find us at sexandbreakfastpodcast.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at Sex and Breakfast Podcast. The people helping us cook this all up are Michael Merle, creating our tasty tunes, dishing out our audio and video is Max Rainier, and our delectable visual designs by Brie Vilaubi.